Hello, good morning.
Hi, Mohit. Hi, good morning. Priyank here.
Oh, yeah. Well, nice to see you.
Yes, you too.
So I'll just get a go ahead from the other participants. So we have 35
Sure.
now. 35 now. I think we can wait for a couple of minutes more so that more people they can join in.
Of course. Yeah, we can wait. So, Mohit, what do you do at All India Institute?
Oh, I'm associate professor of surgery here.
Uh-huh. It's great. Which unit are you in?
I'm in Unit 3.
Unit 3. I don't remember which unit I did.
Okay. No, currently this unit is having Dr. Rajendra Prasad as unit head. Dr. Sinha was also there earlier in this unit.
Yes. Yeah.
And then all others, they are new ones.
I was in the unit. I did my internship in Dr. Chumber's unit.
Right, it was Unit 2. It's Unit 2. Dr. Chumba is still there. And the next year he'll be the head.
Oh, that's nice.
I have a feeling today. Ready to interact.
Yes.
With old pals, yeah.
While. So it was good. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to. I was able to join last week also. Last
Wonderful.
weekend. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It was much later. It was a little later in the night for me, but it was very good. Did you speak also last time?
No. I was just there. I was just there listening.
I see. I saw some comments and some mention of your name. So,
yeah.
But I had joined a little later, so I missed the first 5-10 minutes.
I joined the AIIMS late. No, earlier I was working with Madhya Medical College here. It's called University College of Medical Sciences. So I worked there for almost 10 years, and then I moved to AIIMS.
Yes, of course. I'm familiar with your CMS. I grew up in Delhi. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
And very close to your CMS. I grew up in Anand Vihar.
Oh, yeah. It's just next to it. Yeah. So,
who else? What is the agenda for this morning? Who else do you have?
So we have some faculty members and we have a lot of undergraduate students. So primarily we are targeting them, and it was their initiative, and they wanted us to talk on some issues like, not pertaining primarily to curriculum or academics, maybe something which is like little different from that. Some contemporary things and how times have changed, stuff like that.
I think this is a phenomenal thing you are doing.
Oh, yeah. Even I like that.
Good morning, Mohit. Good morning, Priyank.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Sorry, sir.
So, Aditi, should we be waiting?
That's what I was just wondering.
Because this is also getting recorded and telecast on YouTube.
Yeah, so we could begin. Yeah, we could begin. And Tony, there's a surprise for you. So Dr. Sani may not be able to make it to meeting. He did not remember that he was participating during the same time slot. So he said if he manages to be free, he'll join us. But otherwise, like we are there.
So I'm muting myself, so then you guys can carry on. Okay?
No.
Yeah. So I'm muting my.
Right. Hello.
Okay. Mohit, I'm ready to start at your cue.
Fine.
Whenever.
I'll just start with some kind of brief background or discussion. So good morning, all. We've already discussed. I'm Mohit Joshi, and I'm associate professor of surgery here at the Institute. And today, in this second talk on the series on the initiative on whiteboard and other stories, we have with us two speakers. So we have Dr. Priyank Jain as a first speaker. He is an alumni of AIIMS, 1996. And then he went to US for his residency in internal medicine in Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. Following this, he started working in India again, worked for almost a year in a variety of healthcare settings. I was quite impressed that he worked right from remote villages to metropolitan hospitals. And very rightly, he no longer views disease as an accidental occurrence. And he feels that, okay, it's a expression of social forces which affect the communities. He presently works in Boston and is also an associate program director of the internal medicine residency program there. Regarding the other speaker, we have Dr. Aditi Sinha in our own institute. She is associate professor in pediatrics. Her primary interest is in pediatrics, and in addition, she is involved in so many academic activities here. We have Dr. Tony Jacob also, who was one of the speakers in the last series. And then he will also kind of chip in. And if there are any questions from the participants, particularly to Dr. Tony, after the first session we had, we can pose those questions here, and I'll welcome Dr. to address those queries. So let's begin today's series, and I welcome Dr. Priyank to share his ideas, his views. Dr. Priyank, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Mohit. Mohit, how many minutes do you have? Like, do I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Is that? Sorry. I lost your voice. Yeah.
We have planned the whole session to almost an hour.
Okay.
So you can discuss. Yeah. So
All
Dr.
right.
you can discuss for almost an hour.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much, everyone.
We have about half an hour.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So once again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've often wished that I could speak to myself, like my younger self 20 years ago when I was in college. So this is a close enough opportunity. So thank you for that. Today, as I was thinking about this, and Aditi had invited me to participate, and we were thinking of the title as Hindsight 2020. I was reflecting on that and thinking about,
ये हटाओ चैनल कहाँ पे अभी बस यही है.
Okay, I'll just give this a housekeeping announcement. So for all of those who are not me, please mute yourself.
इधर रखो. एक बार बुखार ना आपको सिस्टर से थर्मोमीटर लेकर लंबा सांस लो. तुम गर्दन सीधा रखो ना.
I'll request all others to
Pratap, if you're the host, can you mute everyone, please?
लंबा सांस लो.
लंबा सांस लो. Now, sometimes I get to say that over here also in Boston with my.
Aditi, can you mute all the participants? Aditi?
Think as I'm not as familiar with the Zoom system, but I think that you can click on the person as a moderator or the host and mute whoever you want. And most people are muted, as I see, except for one.
अभी अगर हमें कंसल्टिंग का साइन कराना है तो किससे करवाना होगा मैम?
Okay. I've reclaimed host and I have muted everyone. So now.
Yeah, that's fine, sir. I think we can go ahead.
You can start, right? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're very well audible.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. So I was saying, so as I was thinking about Hindsight 2020, I thought like I'll pick up the many stories to pick from, but I'll pick up 3 stories and over these past 20 years, and which can be like markers of this journey that I've been on since '96 when I joined AIIMS. So, like many of you, I was back then. So many of you, I was also a successful academic student, successful academically in school, and was celebrated by my teachers. And with much fanfare, entered the medical college after the exams results had come out. And I myself was feeling like on top of the world until I think quite abruptly I came crashing down in the quadrangle where I was there along with my classmates on the first day, and surrounded by a pack of seniors who were waiting for us. I think it started off like I look back at it now, at that time it felt that this is never going to end. It felt very traumatic at that time, but I think that the time passed. I had to shave off this mooch. This is my second mooch now. That was the only time in my life that I've lost it completely. But anyhow, that time passed through. Those days felt tough, but I think one of the things that lasted from that was I vowed never to harass any of my juniors. And while I was there, I tried my best to protect them as much as I could. But soon, you emerge from that. That's one great thing about AIIMS, that at the end of your month of bragging, then it just completely goes away. At least during undergraduate times. So but you emerge from that, and then from there I think we went right into. And during that time, the other thing is that we did not have any compulsory attendance during that time, during our years. So most of college, most of that month, the first month, I don't remember going to many classes. And emerging out of that, there was also we went from there to then it became pulse preparation. So we were all busy with pulse preparation. Again, we started spending a lot of time with pulse preparation. Again, no classes. And then from there was pulse. Again, no classes. Then post-pulse depression. Again, no classes. Then we went to Shimla trip. I think then we had quick exams, some mid-semester exams. We went off to Shimla and stayed over there in Rajkumari Amrit Kaur place. It was a fantastic trip. It was the first time we were just out as young adults. And then came back. I think then that was the second time. The way that it felt like coming down, crashing down in the quadrangle, this is the second time, because we came back and it was, we came back to see our results, and our physiology results had come out, I think at that time. And about 1/4 of our class had failed that exam. I think for many of us, it was probably the first time that we had failed exams or an exam, and so with such a public display. So I think, at some level at the outside, there was some comfort in that there are many other people who are with you in this thing. But internally, I knew that something really slipped and cracked that day, at least for me, and probably for many other people also. Because it was like a big blow to the identity with which many of us entered the college. We all had come in on these laurels and with a very strong identity of being a strong achiever, of being a super achiever, especially in terms of academics. And so taking that failure was very hard. And the other thing was that because there was so many distractions, people reacted to it in different ways, I'm sure. But I'll tell you my story because that is what I remember. But so it led me. I started looking for distractions, and so we were also embroiled in this right around that time. In Students' Union was really busy organizing for a reservation because for our PG entrance reservation. And I think that was like a major point which was able to absorb ourselves, away from physiology, failing in physiology, to just think about this thing and get involved in that. And I think that happened. And then and then I just fell into this path of and pattern of not going to classes. And there were many others, who were doing the same thing, because we had, as I mentioned, we didn't have attendance, which was compulsory, and we would be in college, in our hostels. And see, this is the time when we didn't have like laptops or computers in our hostels, or have internet. So a lot of this was, you were just, I don't even know what we did all day. But it was, maybe we were making, sometimes I think about it as maybe we were making up for some of the lost time. We would travel in the city, spend time with friends, sit in the cafeteria or in CC until late at night, and then wake up late and read up on current affairs or other things, which again which many of us had been neglecting for a long time. But in all of this, if I say that what is the feeling, I remember just feeling, when I look back and I try to bring myself back to that time, I remember feeling lost. And and I also remember feeling quite alone. Although that was the time that I made my best friends, and friends that I continue on till date to be my best friends, and several of them. And one of whom I'm married to now. But still, the time that I remember about that was, a lot of it was about feeling lost. There was also, there are also these happy memories, as I mentioned, of being with friends. There's also, if I think about what am I proud of from that time, I would say that, I was thinking about it, and I would say that I was proud of never cheating on an exam. And I was very close to failing on many occasions, but I think that was one thing, that I did not cheat in any of the exams. And then if I think a little more deeply in that, it is, why is it that I feel so attached to this idea? And maybe because exams were so important at that time, and it was a matter of pride for me, right? So it also is reflective of how narrowly in my personality of that time, exams featured so prominently. And I probably I was proud of being a good test taker, and I did pass all the exams. But I think that at some level I failed in getting the academic education and the learning objectives that were set out for me as an undergraduate. And this was ultimately apparent to me later in internship, or later towards the end of the of these profs. In the beginning of our internship in January 2001 was the Gujarat earthquake, and this was which was the epicenter in Bhuj. And with a few other people from NSS, we organized a student group to go over there. And we raised funds, and with 3 other students, and with the support of many other classmates and other students at AIIMS, but 3 students and 1 faculty member, 4 of us, we went to Bhuj, and we tried to work over there. There were a lot of volunteers there, so it didn't really require much from us for acute trauma care. But they said, why don't you take care of the other, the entire public health system has been devastated. So you go out in a far out outpost and spend your time over there, take care of this broken down CHC over there, and just provide care to patients over there. And at the end of I'd finished my 4.5 years of training, and I was beginning my internship, and I remember feeling utterly unprepared to do this. And now when I look back, I can understand why I was unprepared. But at that time, it hit me, and that movement, and that emotion continued on when I went to Chhasa right after that, and for 4.5 months over there in the primary care posting, and again realized that I'm here nearly done with my training, about to become MBBS, and I have not acquired the medical knowledge or the clinical experience to take care of even basic medical problems of patients. And this was a wake-up call, because for the rest of my internship, I just shifted my focus. The focus had suddenly shifted from exams to patients. and that became the focus for the next. That I think is an important thing that I want to get to. That this was that this was like the end of my first chapter, I would say, of these stories when I was reflecting back. That emerging from this period of feeling, from a place where a very strong sense of being an academic achiever, this paradigm shift of moving from studying for exams to studying for patient care, to learning for patient care. And the feeling, and between this it required feeling this sense of feeling lost. And also there was a component of this feeling of shame that was associated with it. But to remind myself that, I was not alone in that. And probably there are many others who feel that way. And the importance of finding mentorship at that time. So those are some of the lessons that I extract from that, if I ever, from that first phase. But with this paradigm shift, fortunately, whatever happened, but I had this wake-up call. But it now left this immense appetite for studying again, for learning. And so when I came to US for my post-graduation, I devoted myself wholly to that. And day and night, I worked on this thing, tried to make up for the lost time. And those 3 years were very productive in that sense. And I started feeling like I finally understood. I started finally understanding how to be making the diagnosis, prescribing the right treatment, thinking through problems, and problem solving correctly. And signed up for a pulmonary and critical care fellowship. And at the end of my residency, because I thought that required a lot of this pathophysiologic thinking and acute care management, and that attracted me. So I did that. And but in a way, I had during that time we would have to plan this ahead, and I hadn't really planned ahead. Partly because I was enjoying residency so much that when I went to cardiology, I thought I want to be a cardiologist, then nephrologist, then a GI doctor, then so it would just be with every field that I went in. I thought I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to do it more and become a fellow in that. But ultimately, I decided let's do pulmonary and critical care, because in a way, critical care encompasses all of these. So I signed up for so I was a little delayed in my decision, but I joined up critical care. And so for the period that I had in between, I decided that I'll come to India and then work over here, because now there was so much desire to work and apply the lessons that I learned, and also was carrying within me the sense that I trained over here, I never worked here, and all the opportunity that I had earlier I had squandered. So I came back with that emotion. And I started by working. I grew up in Delhi, so I have roots in Delhi. And so when I came back, I joined a corporate hospital in Delhi, and in a critical care unit there. And but now when I started working there, I realized I could now see how different the work culture was in this setting compared to the work culture that I was getting trained in, or where I really learned my work ethics in. Over the last few years. And the thing that particularly struck me was the lack of patient-centeredness in the care of that hospital, and also how difficult it was for patients to access care, how far away they were coming from to that particular critical care unit. And it was with this mindset, and to further explore this, that I started exploring, and I thought, if this is the situation in Delhi and I've grown up in Delhi, what might it be in places far away from Delhi? And I had never lived outside of Delhi and didn't have much personal exposure to that. But I came to know about an organization that was started by some alumni of All India Institute called Jan Swasthya Sahyog. This organization is in rural Chhattisgarh, for those of you who don't know it. And then so I connected with them and I went there. And I still remember that first day when I reached there. So from Delhi to Bilaspur, and then from Bilaspur to Ganyari, which is the village where the center is. It took me almost a half-day journey, or almost a full day. By the time I reached that place, it was late in the evening. I'd set out early in the morning from Delhi, reached there by almost late in the evening, and got off the bike. I'd borrowed a bike from somebody in Bilaspur. I got off the bike, went inside that health center. It was a small health center at that time, just with about 14-bedded inpatient unit. And over there, Dr. Anurag Bhargav, who was then the medicine guy there, so he was doing his evening rounds after finishing OPD in the morning. And so I went there. He was excited to see me. He welcomed me. And then he asked me, what are you doing here? What do you want to do? And I said, I was very excited. So I said, see, sir, I'm here to learn tropical diseases. So he said, Acha, tropical matlab? So I said, like TB, malaria. There was this silence that I was met with. And I could tell that he didn't like my answer. And over the next few several weeks that I lived over there and worked there alongside them and learned from them, I began to see why. The diseases that I was calling tropical diseases, this malaria, tuberculosis, and later on other accidental things like snake bites and leprosy and burns and epilepsy. A lot of these diseases, these were only partly explained by the germs and vectors that are found in the tropics. And these are also diseases of poverty, of neglect, and of malnutrition. These are communities that are stuck between a for-profit health system which they cannot access and a dysfunctional public health system. And without factoring in these social forces, my calling them tropical diseases was trivializing the problem and considering them just an accident of the environment where the humans lived, and not factoring in what the communities are foreseeing and what the bodies are seeing. That was an incomplete diagnosis of the problem. I tell you this story because I think it was a pivotal moment for me. This was around 2006, 10 years after I had joined medical college, almost 5 years after I had become a doctor. But I felt that my eyes had opened to seeing diseases in a completely different way. And alongside, changed what my imagination of a doctor and a doctor's responsibility was. So I returned from that experience and I wrote to my fellowship director and requested to withdraw from the position. And then I spent the next year just traveling and working in different parts of the country, trying to see, still exploring this with just new lenses, the health, what healthcare might mean, and how one can participate in this as a physician. So that's the end of chapter 2. I would say that key lessons that I would draw from that that I offer are, one is, I think that what was crucial over here was the break. For me, it wasn't something that I had planned ahead. I would not have imagined doing that because it is so common for us to just go from school to college, college to PG, PG to next fellowship, fellowship to job. But it was very fortunate for me to have got a break. And when you get a break and to do something, give yourself a chance to do that. We have a long life ahead of us. So it is important to have those breaks and do something which is new, something which breaks the routine, which is outside of your comfort zone, which creates a dissonance within yourself. Because it is within this dissonance that you identify and you're confronted with what your values are. And for me, it helped me discover my professional values at that time. So I came back in 2007. I returned to United States with a burning desire to participate meaningfully in this with these newfound values. I wanted to participate in healthcare inequity, and I considered doing an MPH or partnering with some NGO. Started exploring microfinance and putting money into that. Different variety of different things. I, in fact, even explored how to set up. I thought that the problem of this is not really a problem of health. The illness is defined by social forces, and social forces include poverty, and poverty in villages. How do you take care of that particular thing? I started thinking in those lines, and is it then that we should think about having a wind map of the country and setting up windmills in different places? And so we contacted some people in Spain who would sell secondhand windmills, so just going off on all these different directions, trying to eventually address what felt like inequity and injustice. But as you can imagine, running around in all these different directions, I again felt lost. Now this time I was passionate, I was full of passion, but I was still lost. And the lesson of, however, recognizing that you're lost and seeking help early, that message was not lost on me. So this time I sought help early. And I met Dr. Bang during my year in Delhi, in India, when I was traveling in different parts of the country. And I heard that this is Dr. Anand Bang, Dr. Abhay Bang. He works in Search Gadchiroli, which I know some of the students from recent years in All India Institute have gone for. He's a very wise man. And I was really fortunate to get to know him personally. And then I heard that he's coming to Seattle. And I was feeling very lost. So I took the time off. I went to Seattle to meet him. And I told him of what I'm going through. And he sat me down he brought me up. He said, sit down. And then he said that, he said two very important things. He said, one, if you want to work with people, you have to go to the people. And two, he said, you have to find your swadharma. And he calls swadharma as a confluence of what the world needs and what resonates with your values and what you're good at. And he said, for the last thing, you are good at, and he said, okay, fine, you've figured out what you probably have an idea of what the world wants and what your values are and where the alignment is. But what you're good at is that you're a doctor, you're a physician, and that is what you've trained as. So that has to be your portal of entry. You have to think about that. And so I centered myself. That was very helpful for me. I centered myself and disconnected from all of these various things that I was doing, and reconnected with the JSS. This is about 2 years after I had first visited them and set off on this journey, and started working with them. And I also started looking for a place where I can really work with these clearly defined values, and was really fortunate to find CHA, where I now work, Cambridge Health Alliance, at that time. So this was around 2009 that I came to Cambridge Health Alliance. And this is an institution that espouses the values of equity and compassionate care. I've really been fortunate over here because it has taught me the language and the way to think about it, and also gives me examples of working alongside colleagues who bring this, colleagues, postgraduate trainees, as well as undergraduate students who are all drawn to these values and work with this inspiring vision of a physician, which is a clinician, an educator, and a scientist, and an advocate for their patients within the healthcare system, as well as, when necessary, activism in the public space for policy change at large, which affects the communities.
Dr. Priyank.
Yeah,
Priyank,
I'm finishing.
Interrupt you. No, it's like a kind of wonderful listening to you. This is like really wonderful. I must admire. But in the interest of time, I think we have.
No, right. I'm just wrapping up.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Ending this. I would say that the key lessons from this third chapter is about engaging with your values, and with your values with action. And there is a Japanese concept called ikigai that you can also look up online, which defines what your value, which helps identify what your work can be as inspired by your values and your skills, and by what the world needs, and also finding like-minded people, an institution where you can practice with these values. So I will close this by saying that we started about this session as a 2020, but I want to just say about why is it 2020? Not only because the year is 2020, but it's not that you remember everything correctly when looking in the past, but because we make sense of things by remembering them selectively. And there are probably dozens of other storylines in the past 20 years I could have shared with you. But I chose these three because these are the ones that I would tell my younger self. The one who's sitting in that hostel room in 4x47, worrying about exams, worrying about the future, worrying about what the family will think of me, worrying about whether I'll be a good doctor. That don't worry so much about the future. I would tell that there is a story that is waiting to be told. So don't worry too much about what is going to happen. Go experience, make experiences, make friends, find mentors, see patients, embrace uncertainty, and just take a leap. Thank you.
It was really wonderful talking to you and listening to you, Dr. Priyank. And I must say, the time might have changed. So from 1996, it's like 2020 now. But the way you related your experience, especially the undergraduate days ones, I think all our undergraduates, they can now very well relate to the same experience and the same views. I must admire, and whatever you think, whatever you feel is very well reflected on your kind of gestures, on your face, on your very beautiful smile. Really wonderful. Thank you so much. So you be here. I think we'll have more questions from the participants, and at the end of the talk, we can discuss them. So be with us. To start with the next part of this series, may I now welcome Dr. Aditi Sinha. And as we all know, that she is Associate Professor of Pediatrics here in the Institute with primary interest area in pediatric nephrology and in various academic activities. Dr. Aditi.
Thank you, Mohit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well. You're very well audible.
Okay. Hi, Priyank. Nice to see you. Priyank and I are the same batch from MBBS days. And I think a lot of the sentiments he has spoken about is what I would also probably relate to very well. But I know my version is quite different from his version. But yes, in hindsight, everything looks very different than it was when we were actually experiencing them. So yeah, I mean, MBBS, getting in and going through those 5.5 years, you go through a volley of emotions, I'm sure. And each one's experience would be probably unique to themselves. And I think outside of the usual stuff, the feelings that you go through, the parts that we always discuss, I mean, I think some common themes that we discuss always are about how ragging is a very important part of the initial few weeks of entering this institute. But what we discuss a bit less is probably the feelings that you go through. And I think now, looking back in hindsight, I think these are the core feelings that I think we can relate to, all of us, when we look back over the years and realize what we were experiencing. So we were there fresh out of school. And I would think, particularly for the hostelers, I think life was slightly tougher. It was out of home as well. So you not only have you entered college, but you are also forced to live in circumstances that you haven't been used to at all. So you've been in the safety and comfort zone of school. You've been decorated with all kinds of laurels because you are the best in the school where you are. And you are with your parents, with the comfort of home. And then you are pushed into a lifestyle which you're not accustomed to. So there were quite a few things going on when you join MBBS. So you realize suddenly that you are not the only one who does well at academics. You have all your batchmates who are extremely good at doing what they've been doing. And it's just, matter of fact that, yeah, everyone is good at what they did. They are all toppers. And not only are they toppers, they've also been very good at certain extracurricular stuff. So we have lots of people in our batch who were so talented, and Priyank could vouch for them. And I must tell you that Priyank has been very, very humble in his not letting us know the fact that he was the topper of the batch entrances, named the entrance, and he had topped it. Priyank, are you online? Would you want to just remind me how many places were you first ranked? I don't even recall. But Priyank was famous before we joined. We all knew there's a Priyank Jain that's coming in to join with us, and he has topped this entrance and that entrance and everything else on earth that was existing at that time. So there we were put together into a lifestyle that we weren't accustomed to. and you were supposed to not just fit in with different kinds of people, but also experience a cultural shock of certain kinds, because wherever you were coming from, you had a different background, a different way of relating to people, a different way of doing things, and then you're suddenly put together and you are trying to adjust to different individuals and how they behave and how they do. And it was a matter of slightly, in some ways, survival of the fittest, but I don't think it was as bad as that. I think we all gelled together very well, and we had a very wonderful interaction, wonderful times together in the hostels. And I think looking back, these are the days that I would want to go back to any day, any time of my life. If I could relive them, I would want to relive them. What's also important for me to bring up here is that Priyank is married to my best friend from the early MBBS days, Punita, and I had an excellent time, and we had good times together in the hostels back then. So she's here in many frames, and when I put together the pictures, I can see that she was a very important part of my life back then. And I think those are times that I really look back to with a lot of affection, a lot of happiness, and I don't think that not wanting to go back is an option. I mean, if I want to, I would always want to relive those times. But yes, an important part which Priyank has also highlighted is the feeling of feeling lost. Feeling lost because you are suddenly part of a curriculum and you're not supposed to attend that curriculum. It's very intense, at the same time ragging, and the inconveniences of just being in the hostel and doing things and fitting in and being with peers who encourage you not to attend classes and things like that make you struggle at academics. Yet academics seems a bit optional at times because you don't need to attend classes. And so you are trying to fit in there. And in between, given that you have such high achievers amidst you, you do feel like an imposter. You wonder whether you are a fraud, whether you really merited to be there. I know that many people went through such feelings. And I do know that there would be times in our lives that we would feel such things at every stage of our lives. It's natural to feel that. It's something that's known to be normal for high achievers to feel so. So don't feel anxious if you get these feelings sometimes or even often. The other part of being in the hostels and in group MBBS has been adulting. So, I mean, you need to grow out of your childhood and into being an adult, and that comes with a lot of related stuff which you aren't accustomed to. So all your life, your focus has been on studies and on normal things that you are expected to do as children, and your responsibilities are taken care of. Everything is arranged for you while you're in school. But thrown into a hostel and thrown into a new life, you have to do it all by yourself. And to top it all, you can't really relate these emotions entirely to your parents, because your parents are probably half busy gloating on your glories, and they are quite relaxed now that, okay, we've done the responsible thing. Now they are in college, and you're like, they are on their own and they are managing fine. So I'm sure a lot of us have gone through these mixed emotions and felt these ways. But all in all, I think those are the best years of our lives. All of us would want to live them again. And many of these continue to be our 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. friends still in our lives. These are the most important relationships that you build during these years. As Priyank has rightly said, you would still continue to be in touch with them, emote with them, be free with them, with anything that you want to come out with. So it's important to have these friendships. A lot of time you might have wasted, you might have missed out on certain classes for your friends, but it's okay. I mean, you can catch up, and these are the people who take you through exams as well. But after MBBS, I think, again, as Priyank said, I mean, we do use a lot of coping mechanisms and distraction, and not meeting with the reality check that we need to do what we need to do becomes a very important strategy. And then you're faced with the reality that you have to perform, and you need to meet a certain benchmark, and then you need to qualify certain exams to get through to the next level. And that stage is, again, a stage where you struggle. For us, Priyank has told you a bit about what happened with our batch, but not entirely. what happened was that ours was the year 2001. 2001 was the year that 9/11 happened, and lots of visas to the US were cancelled. So lots of people who were planning to go to the US could not meet their plans, their travel plans, the required needs that were they were putting in place, their applications, and so some were cancelled. So lots of people had to change their goals and aspirations. Some of them stayed back and did a post-graduation, then later moved out of the country. So a lot of things went haywire around 9/11. So in August, the Supreme Court delivered a blow to our reservation policy. So back then, while we were undergraduates, when we joined, soon after we joined, the Students' Union, as Priyank said, they had engaged in us in some kind of, we had these strike. There was a strike about the reservation policy, and when we had joined, we were all excited about participating in a strike and being part of that struggle. And we were confident, we were very positive that everything would fall in place, would be in our favor. But in August of the year that we were interning and PG entrance was a mere less than 2 months away, we had a blow. We got the blow that you are not part of. You are not having a reservation anymore. So before that, what happened was, so suppose you have 4 seats in medicine, 1 seat would be reserved for the AIIMS students, and the 3 seats would fall into the open category, and people would join as per their ranks. So the AIIMS students were more or less concerned with their internal AIIMS rank, and we would be kind of very confident that if you perform well, you would get sort of the discipline of your choice. So we all went through our MBBS training as well as our internship with some sort of a confidence. And it was useful confidence because we do remember our internships very clearly. So I remember my surgery unit, the first posting that I had. I remember how close we were with the senior residents. We remember going out with them. We remember even attending weddings of junior residents in different departments. In pediatrics, I remember attending a junior resident's wedding, for example. In surgery, I remember, for example, attending a dinner party at Dr. Chumber's house, and so on and so forth. So internship was a lot of involvement. So this is extracurricular stuff I'm talking about. Of course, I mean, the senior residents were responsible for training us a whole array of skills. So we learned all the procedures that you would think are required to be learned through internship training. So we did take our internship pretty seriously. We did learn all the skills that we were supposed to learn. I do remember working up cases as an intern, and I still am on good terms with many of my senior residents, be it from casualty posting, be it from any posting whatsoever. So, I mean, we might find them, say, for example, there's a faculty in orthopedics who I run across off and on rounds, and he used to be my senior resident in casualty. He remembers me way back from my internship days. We have had nothing in common ever since, but we have these strong relationships from back then. So all this happened, and what it led to a feeling of was that of free falling, a lot of uncertainty. So those months, the last few months of internship, were full of uncertainty for many of us. We were, again, like at the beginning of MBBS, rather feeling lost towards the end of MBBS. But, we failed to be confident about our own strengths. I think the human mind is very strong, and I think we have the potential to rise above these all mishaps along the way. Or I think all our careers, all of us, despite all our struggles, have finally settled into a place where it gives us an immense amount of confidence looking back now that yes, despite all the tumultuous times that we had, we all did good. We are all now. So what I did personally was, I was quite keen on a career in either medicine or pediatrics. And I knew that right from my, say, 6th semester posting that given a choice, I would want to do pediatrics, 2 favorite subjects from back then. And a lot of that I owe to my faculty, the faculty we rounded with or had classes with. I think that way we realize now our responsibility as faculty members to make sure that the MBBS students are engaged in the postings that they are coming to, as interns, as students in our classes. And I think all departments feel responsible that way to train you well. So, I mean, I did not get a rank in the All India AIIMS entrance exam that was held in November, soon after the judgment of the Supreme Court. I did not get the rank that I would need to guarantee me pediatrics. So my All India rank was somewhere in the 50s. In the 50s, I was getting a whole lot of subjects, but I wasn't interested in them. So I wasn't interested in ophthalmology, ENT, and the like. Lots of other subjects, anesthesia. I wasn't interested. I was very keen on getting pediatrics or medicine. So I made a big gamble. I decided to just drop that rank and do anything, study well, because I really hadn't done any studying at all. In my own assessment, as Priyank said, I mean, we were so busy doing different things that we hadn't really sat down and studied. And I thought that, okay, give myself a chance. Let me sit down and study. Maybe I'll do better the next time. I took that chance. As chance would have it, the All India exam happened in January. I didn't at all take it seriously because I was really preparing for the May exam, and I was keen to take the May exam and go from there. But the All India entrance happened in between. I just took it just as a matter of just taking the exam, and I got a decent rank, and I was getting pediatrics in a whole lot of hospitals. So my All India rank was in the 30s, and I was offered. I mean, before going in for the counseling, I wasn't sure what to do about it, whether to drop this as well, wait for the May exam, not wait for it. I was really confused. So I spoke to a few friends. And my friend said, why don't you go and speak to your faculty in pediatrics? If this is what you're keen on, why don't you go around asking people, because they would have a lot of experience. Why don't you go and speak to the faculty? So that's what I did. I went around and I spoke to maybe 10 faculty in pediatrics. The first time I had gone up to speak to most of them. I knew them from my classes. I had never dared to think around the lines of that, yes, you can go up to your faculty and speak to them about something that is not related to a case or a patient or an academic matter. It was a first for me. And I really wish for our students to have that chance, to have that openness, to be able to come up to us and speak to us without having to think about it. It should be really simple. Just walk up and ask the questions you need to ask. The department, as it was then and as it is now, was very receptive to everyone, from junior faculty to the head of the department. And they all had their own suggestions to make. Barring one, everyone suggested that the specialty is important. The place where you train isn't. And given your rank, you're getting decent places to train in. So I went up with it. I think I was the first institute graduate to move out of the institute to a medical college in the country, not the US. The US has always been second home to all our people. But within the country, probably I was the first to move out and do a training post-graduation somewhere else. So I went to Kalaudi Southern Children's Hospital, that's Lady Hardinge Medical College, one of the busiest children's hospital in the country. And it has a whole range of different kind of exposure than the All India Institute of Medical Sciences offers. So you feel like an elitist if you go to a center like this. Here you admit who you choose to admit because you want to work them up. Here you admit the sickest, the most complex of cases, and it's sort of a choice of who you want to admit. There, it's the truth. The truth is in the peripheral medical colleges. You see what they admit, and you realize that there is a lot going on that requires to be set right. A lot of it has its roots in poor hygiene, in poor education, in inadequacies and inequities of basic healthcare services like immunization and whatnot. So you see abject poverty, you see readmissions for the same problems, which are all entirely preventable. The hospital admits, even now, anywhere from 40 to 80 children a day. So it was a joke, when you join residency there in pediatrics, it was a joke that the junior resident joins and he asks the senior resident, where will I stay? What's my room like? And they would say, okay, your room would be exclusively to yourself. You would have an air-conditioned room and you would go to work. You'd be there all day in an exclusively air-conditioned room. And you'll take breaks, you'll get tea in between, and nobody would really interrupt you there. No, there'll be no supervision there. Nobody was going to be on top of you there. And you know what that room was? That room was called the treatment room. So the junior resident, the first year junior resident, walks in there and he starts his day. Suppose it's an admission day. So the senior resident is in the other doctor's room and he's working up cases and he's sending them over to the treatment room for the kid to be put an IV line on, sampled, and then dispatched off to the room where they are supposed to be dispatched off with the nurse so that she can just do the medications and everything. And it was so busy that you walk into that room and you start out at 8 a.m. and you take a break at 11. You are served a cup of tea. The chai wala would walk in and would serve everybody around. You get a cup of tea. And with the same break, between 8 and 11, the children that you had seen, maybe 5 of them would have required lumbar punctures. So you take a break and you'll do the 5 lumbar punctures. So that's the break. And then you'd carry on again with a routine of sampling, etc., etc. And in the next break, you would go around and collect the X-rays of the children who had required an X-ray, and so on and so forth. So the breaks were about doing some investigation like an X-ray collection or going and seeing the smears or the lumbar puncture fluids and things like that. It was extremely busy. But I think I got very good hardcore training in triage, in emergency medicine there. And I think I could intubate blind. It was very simple to look at 5 children and know this child needs my attention first, and so on and so forth. And this is the kind of learning that I wish our students would. I wish we could get them to see far more. And I feel sometimes that our students are not even meeting up to that challenge of seeing the few that they do get to see. So AIIMS is a privileged place. You do get relatively fewer admissions, fewer outpatient rushes. But I would think that because it's the patients that teach you most. The most learning comes from them, from handling them, and then you go back and read about it and you learn from them. This is what I think is very important to understand. All said and done, I mean, the training was intense. Those 3 years were well spent. It was really so rigorous. I remember I had zoster once and I had tuberculosis once. I was miserable at times, but I was glad for the training. And then I returned as a senior resident here to the institute. I always wanted to return. I always wanted to return because while the hospital was very, very rigorous in its training in terms of the amount of effort required, I realized that it wasn't challenging enough. I realized that in terms of academics, it did not stimulate me the way I would want my training to be. I realized that I was not achieving anything more than what I had already learned through my MBBS years. I had such an easy ride that it kind of sometimes reminded me of school. I really didn't need to read too much to go through 3 years of residency. And that I felt was not appropriate because I thought that each experience should teach me more. I should get the opportunity to get better. I did get better in my skills, in my experiential set of clinical assessment and everything, but I think cerebrally it wasn't challenging enough. So I really needed to return to the institute. And that's what I did. I took an entry, I came back, and I've not looked back. I have been a senior resident in the Department of Pediatrics since 2006. I did 3 years of training, but very early in the senior resident pediatric nephrology. So when I came back, I thought I wanted to do neonatology, but somehow neonatology, the exposure that I got, I probably did not like it half as much as I liked pediatric nephrology. During my senior residency, I was given a small project to handle by my mentor, Professor Bagga. And since then, it's been no looking back. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that this was what I wanted to follow. I know that it's a very, it's a very small specialty. It probably caters to very, very limited fraction of the diseases that we deal with, even in pediatrics, even today. So despite the decline in infectious and preventable morbidities, I do know that a large chunk of morbidity and mortality is attributable to causes which are entirely preventable. I do know that what I pursue now is probably not catering to that. However, I do know that I'm trying to make a difference to the types of people who would not get that kind of care anywhere else but at this center. So I have been fortunate to have had the opportunity to experiment with my career path. So I've tried not to just follow the path of a clinician, but also tried to pursue some basic science, because I believe that to make medicine better, one does need to know why the diseases happen. And to understand why the diseases happen, you do need to have a way to work around understanding the pathogenesis of these diseases. And that's why I chose to have certain trysts with basic labs. And that's why I went on to have certain trainings which were entirely in the labs. So I've been fortunate to have 3 months at Los Angeles in a transplant immunology lab where I learned various kinds of skills. I've been fortunate to have been trained at NII in New Delhi and as a scientist at THSTI. And I think these have been very eye-opening and very, very rewarding, because it helps me understand now better what to do about working around how to address the problems of what needs to be addressed in a particular disease. And there's a lot that we need to do more to understand these diseases better. I've also been engaged in trying to impart education and training to pediatric nephrologists across the country. So our unit is the chief training center for pediatric nephrology services across the country and in the region. And we kind of have a book, and then we've started a journal recently. And all this has been really possible under the guidance of my mentor and his mentors as well. So I think I wouldn't bore you with the details of what I do in pediatric nephrology, but suffice to say that I am probably contributing a very little to the entire case for humanity, but at the same time, I'm trying to put the best little that I can offer. That's what I'm trying to do here. And so I think the 3 books, I don't read too much non-fiction. And I know that last time Tony and Dr. Sani gave you some book suggestions of must read, but I think I deal with so much of serious illnesses in my real life that I try to chill out rather than, go back to reading non-fiction. So one of the earliest books in my school days that inspired me to be a doctor was this book by Rick Siegel, and I'm sure most of you have read this. But in later years, I've come across 2 books that I think kind of echo the principles that I live by. One of them is about outliers. This is a book about what you need to do to excel at what you do. And this is about how merit requires opportunity to excel. So I've had the opportunity to do well in my division, in my area, because of the people that have helped me along the path. But this book, I mean, at least a chapter of it resonates with me always, that talks about how the Beatles say that had they not gone to Berlin, for example, to do all their concerts, before they really hit it big, they made it big. I mean, they and other examples of, say, different kinds from different spheres, the author comes up with and talks about how 10,000 hours need to be invested into anything before you can really say that you're a master at that. So the Beatles had probably done more than 10,000 hours of doing their shows when they went from, say, Liverpool to Berlin, before they really made it big. That's when they really hit it. And that's how he goes on talking about different kinds of examples. But that's very, very important. So whatever you do, I mean, you really need to invest yourself in doing. And your calling could be anything. It may be medicine, it may be something peripheral, but whatever you do, you really need to do a lot of it before you can really say that you're doing it very well. The other book that I think all physicians and surgeons would benefit from reading is this book called Better. I think that, again, Dr. Gawande does a very good job. And in the opening preamble chapter itself, I think I remember anecdotes from my internship when I read that chapter. He talks about how the person on call was the intern in question, or the trainee in question, was handed over a case and to monitor that case well, but the supervising resident made sure that he came in and did enough checks on the patient, and that's how the sickness or the severity of illness was picked up and the patient could be salvaged. So the trainee talks about how had this not happened, that patient may not have made it, and this is what we need to do always. We need to keep at it, whatever we are doing, always worry about that you might need to do more than what you're doing. There might be something that you're missing on doing. So please keep looking at doing it even more carefully than what you are.
Dr. Aditi.
I'm finishing now. This is my last slide. Yeah. So these are two principles that I really live by, more or less, in my work. That I think that when I work, I'm really set free, because there is nothing more enjoyable to me than my work is. And this is a very ironical kind of an example, but this is from way back when the Jewish prisoners were kept in Auschwitz. This is from there, and I've seen this place really myself. And it's written there, work sets you free. So what they would tell them that, you are miserable, yes, you are going to die, yes, but while you're working, you're free. So that's a bad example to give, I'm sure, but I don't know why it just stays with me. And the other one is from the suffragette movement. I mean, I think deeds and not words matter most. But all in all, these are what I would want to leave you with. That, as Priyank has said, and also I feel, is that feeling lost in your MBBS years is very, very natural. It's just part of being the growing up. Regretting not doing more for us, looking back, is also natural. We think that we could have done better back then, but maybe it was just part of the process. It is important to stay focused, but I would think that all of us should take time out to smell the roses, do the things that we love to do, enjoy doing. Finally, everything will fall in place. Just give it time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi, for sharing your moments, your life, right from the days of confusion to the time when you excel in pediatric nephrology. Really wonderful, and I think all the participants will have something to take out something from this. A couple of questions for you. So I'll start with you, because we can discuss this in continuation. Then we can go to Dr. Priyank. And in that couple of questions, one question is a very fun one. So I'll start with that, and then there's a serious one also. So regarding the first question, and it's from Dr. Pratap Sharan, he's saying that, do you ever feel rivalrous with Dr. Priyank about your best friend?
I think they are a very happy and very well suited temperamentally couple. I think I would want to. I don't think rivalry is emotion at all that comes in the picture. No, not at all. What about you, Priyank? What do you think? I think, is Punita online? No.
No, but she isn't.
So it was fun. Really, I enjoyed it. Okay, the second question, a little on a serious note, is from Dr. Laja Patel, and she wants to ask that when you have shared your memories of your undergraduate days, Dr. Aditi.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. So when you have shared your memories of the undergraduate days, so there was so much of kind of confusion and uncertainty. So she was just wondering that why do you still want to relive those moments? Does the life get worse beyond that?
Oh no. Oh no. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But it's the only irresponsible phase in your life, I think. It's the last irresponsible phase in your life. And wouldn't you want to go back to that? I think.
Even I.
Yeah, go ahead,
Mohit, please.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
No. Like kind of your stories was kind of like I was having that kind of itch to share my own stories. But then it's definitely that the time one has during their undergraduate days is probably the most cherished ones. So I think all of our participants, especially the undergraduates, they will realize this once they complete this phase of life and move ahead. So you'll have those kind of memories, and I'm sure that every one of us would like to relive those memories when you just become a young adult and you're out from those clutches of your household, no, and go and experience the world. So those memories, they should be cherished. Thank you so much for your inputs. So Dr. Priyank now. So Dr. Laja, she has really complimented for a very relevant talk of yours. But then she was kind of wondering, when you had so much of fiction and so much of interest in the public health, especially in India, and that kind of motivated you, why did you choose to work in US rather than in India?
That's a very important question, and something that has that I've struggled with for many years. So it is not a question that is it doesn't have a simple answer. I will add to so yeah. So let me but first focus on this question and answer. I'm still feeling like answering one of the other earlier questions.
Can we have your video
yeah.
on, like, your face is very charming and your smile is infectious, really?
No. I'm sorry. I accidentally got disconnected in the middle, so that is why I got lost and then joined. That I missed Lajja's question, which I thought was a very important question. Now, so I'll say there are several ways in which I would answer this question, and the reason why I'm answering this, why I'm taking my time to answer this question, is because I've struggled with this question for a long time around where should my work be, and where is the place that I should be working. One of the things was one of the simple answers is, the biggest so this is when during these my first visit to JSS, Yogesh Jain over there said that, Priyank, what's the biggest risk factor of staying in the US? And I said, yeah. He says, going to the US in the first place. So it is like, so that is one of the things. It's like you come over here, and then before long, you have created a life over here with the job that you're in, with getting used to the work environment that you're in, with your kids and their school and other such things. And you're also, if you have a working partner, then the working partner's career. So the decision of where you will work becomes not a one-person decision as such. So I would say that is one practical aspect to the answer. And the other thing is that I've tried to reconcile this, however. Now, and this is we've attempted on various occasions. Like the first time was in 2007, when all of this was happening with me, this rediscovery of purpose and passion, that I thought that I will just stay on in India, and Punita can finish her training and then come back. But we'd already lived apart for almost 5 years until that time in our own respective trainings. So that also became, maybe I'll come back. So then from there it starts inching towards, okay, then maybe I'll just come over here for my MPH, and meanwhile Punita will finish her fellowship, and then we can come back. And then she tried to come back after her fellowship. So maybe these are some lessons for things that can be helpful as you all think about your careers. That when at the end of the fellowship, when Punita tried to come back, or at the end of my medicine residency over here, when I tried to come back, it is not easy to come back, because when I tried looking for jobs there, I wasn't offered a job. I was only offered a job as a junior resident over there and a non-academic JR. So you'd have to start off at that level again. And at that time, at least, my degree, there was no way to get any credit for the degree that I had or the training that I had achieved over here. And that was the same for Punita also. For her fellowship, beyond her fellowship also, she'd done pediatric cardiology. So after she finished her cardiology fellowship, then we both tried to again come back to India at that point. And then also, even so, one, that your training may not be recognized. Two, the way that you start practicing medicine or may feel very different and very foreign in the setting where you are now trying to integrate into. And three, there is there is another unique term, that you might become a prisoner of your specialty. So my desire was to work in JSS or in a rural place, but that it wouldn't be possible to do that with or to find a pediatric cardiology position in that place. So those are the various factors that I would say which made this decision of moving back to India very complicated. And so I had to figure out how is it that you can make the most of the kind of work that you want to do. And therein, within it, I would say there is also a path of, that's another stream of feeling really, of trying to figure out a path that is unique, a path that may not be the obvious path of, let's say, just if you want to work in India, just go to India and work in India. But finding a path which may not be unique, but or which may not be the obvious simple path, but figuring out a way to involve yourself in the kind of work that you want to do. For me, it turned out to be participating in work at JSS and through other organizations, through one other organization in this kind of work.
So hope that answers the questions of Laja. So actually, even I was wondering, this decision may be a very difficult one. Again, one more question from Dr. Sharan. He really compliments you for bringing out the importance of being lost as the period of your recalibration. Would you kind of give some more inputs onto this? Dr. Aditi also talked about, that's part of a normal part of everyone's life. Still, if you want to put in some more insight into that part of being lost, why you were kind of.
I definitely have thoughts on this. Aditi, would you like to answer this first?
You
give
have
it a chance to
first.
go back and forth. Okay. So feeling lost. I think the two things. One is I found a little that if you are there are these three thoughts that are coming to mind. One, I once found a fortune cookie which said on the inside that if you know what you're doing, then you're not learning anything. So that's one thing. The other one was, and I think that is what brings to this feeling of lost, which is that if you that before something, to create something and to discover something new, I think that you have to go through a period of this manthan period. And you have to go through some anguish, and you have to go through dissonance. Like some people in so the in education field talk about a cognitive dissonance, that your beliefs have to be confronted and challenged for you to start looking at things in a different way. And when that happens for a period of time, you will feel lost because the way that you were looking at things is not making sense anymore. And it is important to confront with that kind of confusion, to which only something that profound will, I think, bring about a paradigm shift within yourself and the way that you look at the world. So as such, now I've started embracing these periods of anguish and struggle. There is a happy kind of struggle. There is a happiness within struggle because there's an opportunity within it of exploring something meaningful that will come out of it.
Oh, thanks for sharing yours, Dr. Priyank. One of the participants, I don't know his name, and then I'll request all the participants that they should mention their name. But then he's asking a very pertinent questions. So he's kind of lost as to how to find a right mentor at the right time, because it talked about the mentors, the guide, the guardians. So he's just wondering how to find a right person at the right time, especially when one chooses to have a path which is like unconventional.
I think it's a bit of a hit and try. I think that again, finding the most efficient way to find the mentor may not be available always. So you would have to do a bit of trying out a few people before you give up on them and then choose the right person. So indulge in more conversations with individuals, speak to your seniors as well, see what they feel, bounce those ideas off them, and see, they might give you suggestions. If you don't get them, come up to any of us. We may not have the answer, but we might direct you to someone else, and so on and so forth. You'll have to indulge in speaking to people. What do you think, Priyank, Mohit?
Yes, no, I think that is you've covered it very well. I would add that when I think about mentors, there are two different. There you can have multiple mentors. There are you can have mentors for your. So there is value of near peer mentors. So people who are 1 or 2 or 3 years beyond you, and they can be very helpful in telling you in the kind of struggles that you're going, who will have a very different viewpoint because they are more contemporaries of and understand exactly what you're going through. Now when we look back, someone else also asked this question of, well, if things were so difficult over there, why do you want to go back, and are they going to get worse later on? I think that we will. That was a carefree moment, but we don't remember the worries of that time. Somewhere I was, I recall reading that memory is a strange sieve. It stores the good memories and you let go of the bad memories. So I think that we do look back very fondly. So 2020 is it is actually not 2020. We have very selective memory of things that make sense for us. So part of it is like just looking back. So I got diverted, but I digress. But the thing is that it is one is that find near peer mentors. That is helpful, but don't just stop there. Oftentimes in our hostel life, and particularly for me, I can say for myself, I did not look beyond that. I had my own friends and maybe a few people a year or two above me, and that was, I felt that I had advice from people who are senior. Now, when you join AIIMS and you're in, or when you join a college and you're in first or second year, people who are interns seem so senior to you. And now, for some of you on this call who may be in your final prof or as interns, you will recognize you're also facing a lot of uncertainties. And look at the juniors who think that you are super seniors. And so find some mentors who are near peer, but also definitely try to find some mentors who are about 6 to 10 years senior to you, because that's another major shift. Those are people who are working in the hospitals, who are working in the clinics, who are taking care of patients, and have a very and there comes and have gone through that switch between the exams and are discovering their professional values. I think that is crucial, that you find certain mentors in that range also.
More structured so that we all can benefit from it. Thank you so much for your views. There's one question from Dr. Twinkle Parekh, but I hope that Dr. Aditi has given a very apt and very elaborate reply to that. So it's about the medical education system in India, and definitely we know that there are some problems, and we all appreciate that, and probably with time we'll be working on that.
Mohit, just one thing. I mean, I would just want Priyank's opinion on how he feels the medical education in India differs from that in the US, and what parts do we need to work on to get it better?
I just want to read the comment from Twinkle Parekh, which says, or do you want to read it out, Mohit, so that if there are people on the phone?
I'll just summarize it. It's kind of elaborate.
Yeah.
I'll just summarize it.
Yeah.
So what she was wondering is that she was kind of questioning the medical education system in India per se. She is saying that she has seen a change in the juniors and the peers, that now they're interested in attending the academics. But at the same time, she finds that at the end of the program, they find it grossly inadequate. So she's just questioning that, is this the case with primary institute like AIIMS? Or is it something wrong with the medical education system as a whole?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm really glad to hear that people are seriously attending classes. So first of all, I must congratulate that and continue doing that. I think it's very important. There are two things that I would say, 2 or 3 things. One is that at the end of MBBS, it is unrealistic to expect that you will feel confident in taking care of patients at the end of MBBS. A lot of training, we continue to learn for many years beyond that. Now, I've often thought of myself that we think that medical student days finish with medical college, but I am relishing my medical student career. I'm going to keep it for as long as I'm working. So that is one thing. So you'll never feel that you have arrived. But what you start discovering more with practice is that there are multiple correct answers, multiple correct pathways to approaching the solution for a patient's problem. That you have to be more patient centered in your approach to patients. There isn't one right answer. You have to discuss with the patient and find what is the right answer for the patient, and that you have to, sometimes you will not have the right answer. So there are these features of that. Practice of medicine is an art which can only be acquired by practicing it. So at the end of our MBBS, we don't have enough clinical experience to be able to do that well. So you should feel unprepared. If you feel unprepared, that is an accurate assessment of yourself, and spend more time after that to do that. Now, what are the things you can do? So that's one just general idea. I think that it is completely appropriate for you to feel unprepared and inadequate at the end of your MBBS. In your ability, in your patient care, in your clinical skills, as well as in the medical knowledge. So now coming to the other, so that's one just general comment. And I think that the other thing is that we also during medical school are only focused on taking care of the biomedical problems in front of us with the patient, right? Now, if the patient says, "But I don't have the money to buy this thing," or that I have these problems, these other problems, we are not, like the social history. Now, what is the social history that we take? The patient whether the patient is it may be a series of checklists. Like, even when I was, I recall social history for me used to be whether they take tobacco, alcohol, or drugs, whether they're employed or not, do they have a kacha house, pakka house, and just like that. But like, is social history, I think, is a very important component also of trying to understand what the patient has done. And so that's an entirely different aspect that we don't spend much time on learning, but you gradually pick up that thing as you start practicing. So that I feel is a blind spot of our curriculum. So if you were asking me that what is one thing which I feel is different, that is one other thing that I feel is lacking. So those are two things. And the third thing about something that I felt is something that I found very helpful or very interesting over here, interacting with certain medical students. And I wouldn't say that this is indicative of everyone here or everyone in India, but I think that there is a signal, which is that I find people, medical students over here, much more aware of they're very much interested in understanding the complexities of the healthcare system, as well as what patients are truly experiencing and dealing with. And I think that comes probably from, and I find them overall more mature, but that is probably a function of that people that students in United States enter medical college after 4 years of undergraduate. So they are already joining at around the time when we are interns, right? In terms of their, so they've gone through certain maturation, the adulting, as Aditi had mentioned earlier. So, and on us in India, there is the burden that you have to do that while you have to do the adulting, while you are going to be discovering these professional, while form your professional identity. So the work is extra hard for all of you, and one should acknowledge that the work is extra hard. You will not feel prepared, so don't feel bad about it. And three, that learn from your patients. So that is the most important thing. As you go and learn from your patient, you will discover that medicine and medical knowledge is very messy. We are used to, in our entrance exams, we have a selection bias. Most of you are good with physics, chemistry, maths, and those topics. And these are all where there is very deterministic method of the sciences. But when we get into medical sciences, it is a lot of things are gray, they're uncertain, you have to use your judgment. And that departure from medical knowledge to clinical knowledge that you create will come with time. So those are my thoughts about this.
I think I would just want to echo that sentiment more, the last one that Priyank brought forth. I think that is where we feel a lot of dissatisfaction. We come out of a system of schooling wherein we know the right answer is this. We know that the approach to covering a topic is complete this much of reading, and there you are, you've arrived, you've done what you needed to do. And if it's say physics or maths, you know the answer. There can be only one right answer. Whereas medicine, especially, it may not be so true for, say, surgical specialties. But in medicine, medical specialties, there is no correct answer, and you're constantly learning. You haven't arrived there any day. Even now, we continue to learn from our patients. Patients keep teaching us new things. And as Priyank rightly said, what is the perfect therapy according to you in your mind is not the, it's only a part of the small problem for the patient. Because in the patient's approach, achieving a complete cure is not all he wanted to achieve. He wanted to achieve a lot in terms of quality of life, in terms of continuing to be employed and things like that. A lot of stuff that's going on in the background that we don't cater to or pander to at all, thinking it's not our job. So a lot more is going on in their lives, and you may take it two ways. I mean, for us, most of us, what we do is we try to make it as better as we can. Some people, I do know that they get disillusioned and they lose hope and they move off to a different stream, trying not to want to work on this. But I think for the most of us, I think it's important to stay responsible and try to make the difference that we can. So there'll be no perfect methods. I think finally, whatever you do, you will have to continue to spend time with your patients to learn more and more.
Thank you, Dr. Aditi, for supplementing that. So we really had a wonderful time, and I personally say I've thoroughly enjoyed today's session. So may I now request Dr. Tony, if he is there, for supplementing something, if he wants to say something in continuation of his previous talk, or he wants to supplement something from the queries we have, the questions we have from the today's session. Dr. Tony?
I was actually about to raise my hand to make a comment about a couple of things.
I made your job simpler, no?
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. So what I was actually in continuity with what I had actually said last time was that what you have is an opportunity for a university education, which is very different from what you have in school. And that is something that personally, I take it as a responsibility as a preclinical and a first contact for an undergraduate student in the Department of Anatomy as a personal responsibility, though a lot of people don't agree with me. The hand-holding to adulthood and a university education is extremely important. So what we provide you, if you actually understand, are just tools. So this is an example that I use, that your tools in the first year are probably this thick. By the time you reach your final year, a single tool that is Bailey's or even Harrison's 2 volumes, your tools become this thick and the font size also starts reducing. But what is important to recognize is that they are actually just tools. So if you, in hindsight, from what Priyank and Aditi said, you can actually start patient-centering your education in the university. It actually would help you. So to answer what Twinkle had raised, it actually is a rather unstructured course. The only structure that we can provide you are the few lecture hours, which are usually not very important also. The only thing that you can actually give the student in a lecture probably is just a perspective that, okay, this is one method of approaching this subject. But you can never predict that this patient is going to be there during my posting with this particular pathogenesis or this particular disease or this particular etiology or this particular social background. You can never predict it. You can never predict that this series of patients is going to be coming to me in this OPD. You don't know. So the day that you go to the clinic, the day you go to the OPD, the day you go to the emergency, you are faced with a specific case. And then what is important and what is enjoined upon you as a responsibility is to go back and look it up in Robbins, in Harrison, in Schwartz, in whatever. And that way, your depth of knowledge in the subject becomes patient-centered, it becomes self-directed, and you yourself will feel that you are responsible for what you're learning. It is not dependent on your faculty. It is not dependent on your senior resident or your junior resident who's there posted with you, but it is your responsibility. And if you see your seniors as a method of clarifications of doubts, that okay, ये मैंने पढ़ा था, लेकिन ये मुझे समझ नहीं आया, they may actually be able to help you to understand that. So please consider a university education as an extremely self-empowered method of learning. We are there to guide you. We cannot tell you that ye padho. If you look at us like school teachers who are going to write on the blackboard कि ये रट्टा मार के आना है and ये अगर तुम reproduce करोगे अपने एग्जाम में तुम्हें 10 में से 10 नंबर मिलेंगे, then probably you're not getting much out of the education system that we have. And it's very easy to keep blaming the education system at every point in time. But if we understand our own responsibilities, that blame game can actually be reduced. That was one point. And we're all there. And what Priyank raised as a point is an extremely important point about your near peer mentors, slightly older mentors who may be a JR or an SR for you as an undergraduate student, and a faculty mentor. And it's not necessary to go with the mentors that you were assigned. So the day that you join AIIMS, you are already assigned to a faculty mentor, you have a AIIMSonian mentor, and you also have a student mentor. And the student mentors are also from different years. So sometimes you will yourself realize that probably I don't gel with this person. We don't think alike. We probably do not have the same outcomes in mind and things like that. So under such circumstances, there is no harm in saying that, okay, this is not working. Can we move on? Can I look for somebody else? And nobody is going to take it on their ego and say that नहीं मेरा तो ये है, मेरा हक है तुम्हें मेंटर करने का, चाहे तुम्हें पसंद आए या ना आए, that is not my issue. You have to stick with me. Nobody's going to say that to you. I hope so. I personally hope so. Because if the relationship is not working, whether it's your personal relationship or a mentoring relationship, you need to take a call and say, okay, enough is enough. We need to move on. So that was about the mentoring bit. Is there anything else that you would like me to address?
I think in the interest of time, we'll have to curtail somewhere.
Stop.
Although, like somehow this discussion is going very interesting, and I would personally not like to interrupt it. Now, there are a few more questions. And one of the question is directed to Dr. Tony. It's from Dr. Vashishta. And the question is, what is the importance of changing the institutes in career growth? And then, although she has remarked Dr. Piyush also, but he's not with us today. So the question is that, what about the institute inbreeding? And she is wondering that how it has helped Dr. Piyush to be in the same institute throughout his life and helped him. So if you can just put in some of your thoughts to that. The first one, what's the importance of changing institute in career growth? And the second one, like if you can somehow throw light on that, how Dr. Piyush should have helped in being in the same institute.
See, everybody can have their own personal stories about how different experiences have helped them and motivated them and given them a wider perspective of life. For Dr. Piyush, he got that perspective in his own career growth, in his own career path. So his story may not be my story, may not be Priyank's and Aditi's story. So that is extremely, extremely different. And it cannot be said that everybody should have the same. For example, for Aditi, she realized her inability, and Priyank also realized his inability to deal with patients when they were exposed to a different background altogether. And they realized that their training at AIIMS was inadequate. For me as well, last week also, I think somebody had raised the question that given an option, would you have done PG at AIIMS? And I hate to say it, I would not recommend today doing an MD anatomy from AIIMS. I mean, you get a lot of research experience maybe, but the grasp over anatomy that I gained from Maulana Azad may not be the same kind of grasp of anatomy that I would gain from AIIMS. So I'm glad that I had the research experience at AIIMS, but I'm glad that I learned anatomy from Maulana Azad as well as during my undergraduate days. So inbreeding is not necessarily a bad thing if your career path is going to be mentored and is going to get you to where you want to be. At the end of the day, you need to decide where you want to be. And never ever forget that. If you're happy someplace, for example, for me, after I worked as a contract faculty for a short while at VMMC, I kid you not, I used to come back to the lab at AIIMS, crossing the road from VMMC after 4 p.m. when everything used to get shut down at VMMC, just to maintain my sanity. So that, I would be working with my PhD group and with my faculty mentor, as well as with my other research fellows, to keep me challenged, to keep me occupied, and to keep me sane. And coming back to AIIMS as a faculty was the only time in my entire life where I thought and I felt that I've come back home. And that homecoming was something that is extremely important, because the work environment and the kind of challenges and the kind of experiences that I get at AIIMS, I've not got anywhere else. But that said, neither am I too nostalgic, nor am I regretful of the path that I've had, because at every step, I've learned lessons which have made me what I am today.
Perfect, Dr. Tony. And that was so perfect, I think. And you're the most balanced person I have seen in my life.
Ouch.
So hope that experience and views of yours will help all of us. So another time is up, and we have gone a little more overboard. I just wish to thank all of the participants together, and especially the speakers, Dr. Tony, Dr. Ankur, Dr. Aditi, for sharing their wonderful memories and to make it so apt and so relevant to the present scenarios. Thank you so much. And I hope that we'll have Dr. Priyank Jain in future also. So can I request him so that we can be with him in the future sessions also? Dr. Priyank?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I just noticed that all four of us, I think, faculty here are all of the same batch, 1996 batch.
Is that so?
I am of 94 batch, so I'm the odd man's out.
Oh, you're senior to us. You're a near peer senior.
Right. So just
Okay.
to have some closing remarks, can I have Dr. Pratap Sharan? Dr. Pratap Sharan, sir, can you just add few more closing remarks?
Okay. I would much rather be in the background for this. It's believed that analysts sit behind couches and they don't speak. So it helps the client grow in its own image. And the fact that clients should grow in their own image is something which is very important to analysts. So I wouldn't really put my 2 bits into this. I would want the group to grow into its own self. Thank you. And it's over to Mohit for the closing remarks, the real closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I think I thoroughly enjoyed today's session and hope that all our participants would have also enjoyed. Now, this is not the end of the story. So what we have, listened today, the views, the remarks we had today, they can continue throughout the time, and in the next week also we can have few queries if our participants they come up with some. So it was again really wonderful interacting with you. Thank you so much. Thank you all.